The stars outside the space station looked like tiny sparks in a sea of black velvet. Commander Elias Rayner stood at the viewing deck, his hands behind his back. Earth was far away, now just a small blue dot among many. But today he was not just a man from Earth. Today, he was ambassador of humanity. The Marathon Spire was a giant floating station in neutral space. Home to over 300 alien species, it turned slowly above a peaceful planet, shining with soft lights like a lighthouse in the dark. Inside, the station buzzed with activity. There were creatures with wings, others with shells, some tall like trees, and some that shimmered like water. Elias had trained for years for this day. He had studied alien languages, cultures, and rules. He had read about logic-based societies, mind-linked beings, and creatures that could taste thoughts. But nothing had prepared him for the Ilari. The Ilari were a mysterious species. Tall, elegant, with smooth silver skin and deep violet eyes, their expressions were calm, almost too calm like statues that breathed. They were known for their deep intelligence and strong logic. Motions to the Ilari were seen as ... distractions. Unnecessary, even dangerous. Elias had only read about them in files. He had never met one in person. Not until today, Ambassador. Rayner, a soft voice said behind him. He turned around. There she was, Viorella. She was wearing a long robe made of flowing fabric that shimmered like moonlight. Her hair was white, tied back with silver bands. Her eyes so calm, so unreadable, studied him with quiet interest. I am Varela, she said of the Ilari diplomatic circle. I will be your cultural liaison. Elias gave a warm smile. Pleased to meet you, Varela. She tilted her head slightly. You are smiling. Is this a sign of greeting or amusement? He chuckled softly. Both, sometimes. But mostly it means I'm happy to meet you. I see, she said, blinking slowly. Humans often display emotions openly. We Ilari do not. I've read that, he said. But don't worry. I'll try not to confuse you too much. She didn't laugh. She simply nodded. Follow. Me? I will show you your quarters. As they walked through the shining halls of the station, Elias couldn't help but glance at her. She moved like water, graceful, smooth, and always calm. But there was something curious in her eyes, as if she was watching everything he did, learning from every step he took. You seem different from the others I've met, Elias said. After a while. In what way? She asked. You ask a lot of questions. All Ilari ask questions, she replied. But most ask in silence. I have been selected to study you in detail. Why me? Elias asked, raising an eyebrow. Because humans are emotional, and we do not fully understand what that means. Elias nodded slowly. Well, I guess I'm your experiment then. She paused. That is not the correct word. You are not a subject. You are a connection. There was a silence between them, not awkward, but full of thoughts neither had. The words for they reached his quarters. The doors slid open with a soft hum. Inside, the room was clean, simple, and modern. A window looked out into space, and there was a small table with chairs that looked like they were made of light. I will return tomorrow at second sun cycle, Varela said. Before she turned to leave, Elias asked, Do you like your job? Varela. She paused again, longer this time. Then she said, Ilari, do not speak of liking or disliking. We serve purpose.
Boys.
We act on reason. That's not what I asked, he said gently. Her face didn't change, but for the first time, her voice softened. I do not dislike it. Elias smiled again. That's a start. She nodded once more and walked away, her robe flowing. Behind her, like silver mist, later that night, Elias sat by the window, staring into the stars. He thought about Varela's voice, her questions, the way she blinked slowly when something confused her. He didn't know what it was yet, but there. Was something there? Something more than a job? More than a mission. He wasn't sure what he expected from the Ilari coldness. Maybe silence. Walls built from logic. But not this. Not curiosity. Not softness. Not Far away in her own quarters, Varela stood still in front of a mirror. She touched her face gently with her fingers. He smiled again. She whispered to herself, and for the first time in her life, she felt her cheeks grow warm, a sensation unfamiliar and strange. She looked at her reflection and tried to understand it. A moment passed. She didn't understand, but she didn't want it to stop either. The next morning, the Marathon spire glowed softly as it turned in space. The station followed a slow orbit around a calm blue planet, and the second sun cycle began. A golden light filtered through the hallways. Elias Rayner had just finished his tea when the door to his quarters chimed. "Come in," he said. Setting the cup down, the door opened, and Varela stepped in. She wore the same silver robe, though today it shimmered with faint shades of pale blue. Her hands were behind her back, her posture perfect. "Good morning," Elias said with a warm voice. "Is that a greeting or a question?" she asked. He smiled. "It's a greeting, but also a wish that your morning is actually good." "I see," she replied. She paused. Then, "Good morning." Elias's smile grew. "That's the spirit." She tilted her head slightly. "I do not have a spirit." "The Ilari do not use such words. It's a human phrase," Elias said. "It means your attitude, your mood." Varela gave a small nod. "Ah, that is the purpose of today's task, understanding mood, emotion, and human expression." He blinked. "Oh, is that the plan?" "Yes," she said. "As your cultural liaison, I am to begin your emotional profile. The Ilari protocol requires a full report." Elias laughed lightly. "So I'm your assignment." "Or a case study," she answered, "but also a companion for cultural exchange." Elias stood. "Then let's begin." The learning room. They walked to a quiet chamber inside the station called the Harmonium Room. It was designed for peaceful meetings. Between species, the room had cushions instead of chairs, and floating light globes drifted above them like jellyfish. Elias took a seat and invited Varela to sit too. She sat gracefully, folding her hands in her lap. Varela held up a small glowing tablet. "We will begin with visual observation. I will show you images. You will describe how they make you feel." Elias leaned back, curious. "All right, go." Ahead, she tapped the screen. An image appeared, a bright green forest full of sunlight, with a child chasing butterflies. "How does this image affect you?" Elias smiled softly. "It feels warm, peaceful, like a memory of a better time." "Interesting," she noted. "Now this." The next image was of a burning building, people running from smoke. Elias frowned. "It's painful, sad. Makes me worry for the people. I want to help them." Varela looked up. "Why?" "Because no one should suffer," he said. "It's human nature to care." She blinked slowly. "The Ilari do not feel sadness in this way. Study problems, then solve them. Emotion is considered inefficient." "And yet," Elias said gently, "you're here, learning about it." Varela paused. "Yes, music and meaning later." Elias played her a piece of earth music, something soft and classical, full of strings and gentle piano. It played through the room like water moving through a stream. Varela closed her eyes. When the music ended, she opened them again. Her voice was quieter than before. "That sound. It moved something in me. I do not understand it." "That's what music does," Elias said. "It doesn't need words. It speaks to the heart." "Where is this heart?" she asked. "It is not the same as the biological organ, is it?" Elias chuckled. "Oh, no, not the heart that pumps blood. I mean, the part of us that feels deeply. The part that loves, cries, remembers." Varela sat still for a long moment, and she whispered, "Do you believe the Ilari have such a heart?" Elias looked at her gently. "Yes, I think you do. Maybe it's just been quiet for a long time." Spark in the silence, the next few days passed quietly, but something had changed. Varela began asking deeper questions. Not just about human culture, but about love, grief, laughter, Why do humans cry? She asked one day. To release what hurts, Elias replied. It's not weakness, it's how we heal. She nodded slowly. Why do humans hold hands? 2. Feel connection, to remind each other that they're not alone. Another pause. Why do humans fall in love? Elias smiled softly. Because it's the most beautiful kind of connection we can feel. Love is when another person becomes part of your story. Part of your heart. Varela looked away. The Ilari do not fall in love. Maybe you just forgot how, Elias said kindly. A strange feeling that evening, Varela returned to her quarters. She sat quietly at her desk and wrote in her private log. Today I felt something. It came when Elias smiled. My chest grew warm and my thoughts scattered like wind on water. I fear I am breaking protocol, but I do not wish to stop. She closed the log, her fingers resting on the screen. Her cheeks felt warm again. She touched them gently, blushing. That's what it was called, a human reaction. And now, it belonged to her. The sky outside the window was full of stars but Elias. Rainer wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Varela. She sat across from him in a small emergency shelter, the only light coming from the soft glow of a lantern. Outside, thick trees with glowing leaves waved gently in the night wind. Strange insects buzzed, but nothing dangerous was nearby. Their shuttle had crashed earlier that day. It was a simple mission deliver peace documents to a nearby planet, but a sudden power failure forced them to land on this quiet, uninhabited moon. A repair team had been sent, but it would take a day to reach them now. The 2 ambassadors were alone. Surprisingly, neither of them seemed to mind. Shared firelight Ilias had built a small fire using fallen branches. Varela sat close by her, hands folded, her eyes on the flames. I read about fire in human books, she said quietly. You use it for warmth, for cooking, for stories? He smiled. And sometimes, for moments like this, quiet moments. Varela looked at the flames. It dances, like it's alive. Elias leaned back. I never thought I'd hear an Ilari say something poetic. Varela gave a small glance. I have been reading human poetry. It is difficult, but beautiful. He nodded. Poetry is the language of feeling, sometimes even more than music. She was silent for a while. Then she asked softly, Elias, may I ask something strange? Of course, he said. What does it mean to miss someone? Elias turned to her, surprised. By the question, it means you think about them when they're not around. You wish they were beside you. You feel a space where they should be. Varela lowered her eyes. I believe I felt that. Yesterday, when you were gone for the morning meeting, Elias stared at her. He wanted to speak, but the words caught. In his throat, the human heart later. As the fire faded to a soft glow, Elias and Varela sat closer. I always thought the Ilari were like crystal, Elias said. Strong, clear, and cold. She looked at him calmly. That is not untrue. But even crystal can crack, he added gently. And through those cracks, light can pass. Varela was quiet. Her eyes were on the ground, but her thoughts were racing. I was taught that emotion brings chaos, she whispered. That to feel is to fall into disorder. Maybe, Elias replied. But without emotion, how do you grow close to someone? How do you know joy? How do you choose what matters? We choose by logic, she said. He nodded. But I think you're beginning to choose by something else. She looked at him, really looked, her silver eyes searching his face, as if trying to solve a puzzle that no one had given her the answer to. I do not understand what is happening to me, she admitted. You're beginning to feel, Elias said softly. That's what's happening. Varela turned back to the fire. It is frightening and beautiful. Secret moment. A secret moment as the night grew darker. Then unexpectedly, Varela spoke again. Elias, may I ask you something? Personal? He looked at her. Yes, if I learned to feel everything, would it change who I am? Elias paused. Yes, but it wouldn't destroy you. It would open you. She hesitated. Then, in a soft, shaky voice, she asked, "Will, you teach me how to feel, all of it?" The fire crackled. The question hung in the air between them. Elias was silent for a long time. He knew what her words meant. For an Alari to ask such a thing, to invite emotion into her life, was nearly unthinkable. It went against everything her people believed. Yet here she was, asking not as a diplomat, but as a person. "Yes," he said quietly. "If you're ready, I'll help you." She closed her eyes for a second, as if taking in the meaning. "I don't know if I am ready," she said, "but I want to try." Rescue comes the next morning. A rescue shuttle arrived. Engineers repaired the damage. The two ambassadors were safely returned to Marathon Spire. But something had changed. Virella walked more slowly now, not because she was tired, but because she was thinking deeply. Her hands sometimes moved. With small, unfamiliar gestures, she looked at colors longer. She paused when hearing music. And every time she saw Elias, she felt that strange warmth again, a private log that evening. Virella sat in her quarters and opened her log. "Today, I asked a question that no Alari has asked before. He said yes, and I felt something I cannot name. It was not fear, but it shook me. Perhaps it was hope." She saved the log and sat still. She touched her own hand. It felt like hers, but also like something new was growing inside it. A heartbeat that wasn't only about life, but about living. The station felt quieter than usual. Commander Elias. Raynor walked through the shining halls of Marathon Spire, passing alien diplomats and floating translators. He nodded politely to everyone, but his thoughts were somewhere else with her. It had been 3 days since they returned from the moon. 3 days since Virella had asked him to teach her how to feel. She hadn't visited him since then. She hadn't sent a message. And that silence was louder than any noise. Was she afraid? Regretful? Or was she simply changing? He wasn't sure. But he missed her. Virella sat alone in the Alari learning chamber. The room was full of glowing panels, silent screens, and long silver tables. She had been here for hours, reading about human emotion books, poetry, reports, even stories from Earth's history. But words could only show so much. She closed the book in front of her. "Compassion is not weakness. It is strength in soft form." Sentence stayed with her. It reminded her of Elias, his voice, his kindness. His steady presence beside her when the fire was burning in the sky was full of stars. She stood up. She had made a decision. The meeting. Rumi Elias was sitting in the diplomat lounge, sipping a mild tea made from Martian leaves. When the doors opened, Virella stepped in. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were different. She walked toward him slowly. "Elias," she said. He stood up. "Virella, I need to ask you something," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost uncertain. He nodded.
Go ahead.
She hesitated then. With a deep breath, she asked, "What does it mean to want someone to stay?" Elias looked at her, surprised by the question but moved. "Deeply. It means you feel better when they're near. That their presence brings comfort, safety, maybe even joy." Virella lowered her gaze. "I feel that when I am with you." Elias stepped closer. "Virella, that's what humans call attachment. It's the beginning of connection." Looked into his eyes. The Alari do not allow attachment. It is seen as dangerous, clouded. And yet Elias said gently, "You came here to ask me anyway." Virella nodded, slowly, then added, "I am not asking as an ambassador. I'm asking as myself." Elias felt something stir inside him, quiet joy, a fragile hope. "Then I will answer as myself too," he said. Not just an experiment. They sat together in the same harmonium room as before. But this time, something was different. Virella was no longer observing him as a cultural subject. Now, she was listening. As a person who wanted to feel, understand, and grow. "Do you know what courage is?" Elias asked. "I know the definition," she replied. "To act despite fear." "Yes," he said. "And you're doing that right now." Virella looked down at her hands. Sometimes I feel something in my chest. Like pressure. That's emotion trying to come out, Elias said softly. Maybe sadness, maybe love. She was silent. Then she whispered, "It frightens me." He reached across the table and gently placed his hand near hers, not touching, just near, enough to feel the warmth. "You don't have to walk this alone," he said. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then softly she asked, "Elias, will you stay?" He smiled. "Yes, I will." Elari Council troubled, but not everyone was ready to accept Virella's change. The Elari High Council. After hearing whispers of her growing connection to the human ambassador, summoned her for questioning. Inside a tall white chamber with curved walls, 3 Elari elders sat in silence. Their faces were calm, their voices deep and cold. "You have formed emotional ties with Anan Lari," one said. "I have learned," Virella replied, standing tall, "and I have felt. You are abandoning the Elari way," another elder said. "We do not feel. We observe. We act with reason only." "I believe reason without heart is incomplete," she said. "Emotion does not make me weak, it makes me whole." There was a long silence. Then the final elder said, "You must choose. Return to your place among the Elari with a clear mind, or leave us and follow this emotional path." It was a quiet, heavy moment, but Virella did not blink. "I choose to feel," she said, "even if it costs me everything." Back to the window that night, Elias stood once again at the viewing deck, watching the stars. He wasn't sure what would happen next. If the Elari rejected her, she could lose her rank, her position, maybe even her place on the station. He was ready to fight for her, but he didn't know if she would still want him to. Then, footsteps behind him. He turned. It was Virella. She walked up beside him, for the first time, reached out her hand. Elias gently took it. No words were needed. Just the stars. Just the silence. Just them. The news spread faster than light. Across the silver halls of Mirathon Spire, ambassadors, scientists, and diplomats whispered the same name, -vir, Ella and Elari. Diplomat had openly chosen emotion. She had spoken against the High Council, and she had held hands with a human. To many, it was unthinkable. To others, it was inspiring, but not everyone agreed. Division Begins. A meeting was called. Inside the grand chamber of the spire, species from across the galaxy gathered. Tall chairs floated around a round table. Glowing banners marked the different worlds. The Elari side was silent. Their 3 representatives sat with unreadable expressions. On the opposite side, Elias Rayner stood with calm strength. Virella sat beside him. She wore no formal robes, now just a simple white tunic, her eyes once cold and glass-like, now held. A quiet light. She had changed. And everyone could see it. The head speaker, a neutral being called Terran, opened the session. "There's been a disturbance in protocol," Terran said. "A member of the Elari has expressed personal emotion. It breaks centuries of tradition. Emotion is a threat to balance," one Elari elder said. "If left unchecked, it will spread." Elias stepped forward. "Emotion is not a disease. It is part of what makes us intelligent life. It's not weakness. It's strength with compassion." A tall alien from the blue world of Neelon added, "The Elari were always distant, but now one of them understands us. That is progress." Being sharp and stern disagreed. Or is it the beginning of disorder? Voices rose. Some argued for freedom, others for control, but through it all, Virella said nothing. She simply looked around the room, wondering how such silence could still feel so loud. Virella speaks at last. She stood. The room quieted. "When I was young," she began, "I was taught to be still, to think only with logic. I followed that path, believing it was right." She looked at the gathered leaders. "But then I met a human, not a warrior, not a scientist, just a man who listened. He taught me that knowledge is not complete without feeling. She placed a hand over her chest. I now understand sadness, joy, fear, hope, and yes, love. Gasps echoed across the chamber. One elder stood. You disgrace the Alari way. Virella looked at him gently. Or perhaps I reminded of something forgotten. Terran raised a hand. Enough. A vote will be held tomorrow. Until then, this matter remains under review. The meeting ended, but something had changed. Hearts had been moved, some quietly, some with great resistance, but they had moved. A moment of doubt that night, Virella sat alone in the observation room. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass. Elias entered quietly. You were brave today, said. She nodded but didn't speak. He sat beside her. Are you all right? She whispered, I'm afraid. He took her hand gently. That means you care. That means this matters. She looked at him. What if I lose everything? Then we'll build something new, Elias said softly. Together? She turned to him. Even if the whole galaxy disagrees? He smiled. Let the stars choose sides. I've already chosen mine. Virella's lips trembled, slightly, then formed the smallest smile. It was the most human expression she had ever shown. A message from the homeworld the next morning. Private message came from the Alari homeworld. Virella opened it alone. Her parents appeared on the screen, calm, proud, silent. We have heard of your actions, her father said. The council is disappointed, but we are not. Her mother added, you are becoming more than we ever imagined. Be strong, child. We are watching and hoping. The message ended. Virella closed her eyes. Tears small. Silver touched her cheeks. The chamber was full once again. Terran stood at the center. We vote now, they said. The question, will emotion be accepted as a valid experience? In interspecies diplomacy, starting with the case of Virella of the Alari, representatives raised hands, one by one, some with confidence, some with hesitation, some with protest. But as the votes were counted, a result became clear. Emotion. Accepted by a narrow margin. Gasps echoed again. Some smiled. Others looked away in anger. But the decision was made. Elias looked at Virella. Virella looked at the stars. And somewhere in her chest, that quiet warmth grew stronger. A new path begins later that evening. Elias and Virella walked through the garden. The section of the spire. Lights hung above, and gentle music played. Alien trees swayed softly. Flowers from many worlds bloomed around them. Virella stopped and looked at a glowing blue flower. It's called a lumabloom, Elias said. They only open when touched with care. She reached out, gently touching the petals. The flower opened in her hand. I didn't think I could be like this, she said quietly. You always could, Elias replied. You just needed to give yourself permission. They stood close, silent, not needing words, two hearts from two worlds, connected by something beyond species, beyond science, something very human. The stars above Marathon Spire looked peaceful, but inside the galactic station, peace was growing thinner. Since the council had voted to accept emotion as part of diplomatic learning, many species had welcomed the decision. But a few, especially some members of the LRE, were not pleased. They believed Virella's choice had damaged their reputation. They called her a traitor, a symbol of weakness. And far from the spire, on the cold moon of Ellerith Prime, a group of strict LRE elders was planning something dangerous, something no one expected. Signs of trouble. Virella stood with Elias on the observation deck. She had started wearing a mix of Earth and Alari clothes, now simple. Light-colored robes with soft patterns. Her hair, once always tied, now moved freely behind her. I feel watched, she said softly. Elias looked around. Watched by who? She shook her head. I'm not sure. But my people are quiet lately. Too quiet. Elias had noticed it. 2. The Alari section of the station had been more closed than usual. Their windows dark, their voices hushed. He turned to her. Do you trust them? She paused, then answered, not all of them. An unexpected message later that evening. A message came in. It was encrypted. Only Varela could read it. She opened it on her tablet, and her eyes slowly widened. What is it? Elias asked, walking over. She handed him the device. Operation Purity begins soon. The Council has lost its way. Emotion is a disease. It must be erased. Prepare for the restoration of silence. Elias stared at the words. This sounds like a threat. Varela nodded, her voice quiet. It's more than a threat. It's a plan. A plan to strike the station. Preparing for the worst alarms were not sounded, not. Yet, they needed to confirm the threat. Elias took the message to the human security team. Varela contacted the main Alari Council, but many of them refused to respond. Some even denied the message was real. But one old Alari counselor, a kind female, named Serena, sent a reply. You must be careful, she said. A group called the Silent Order has been growing for years. They believe the Alari should return to their emotionless roots. They see you as a danger, Varela. What do they want? Elias asked. To erase emotion from the galaxy, Serena said. And if they can't erase it, they will silence it. The attack begins. It happened 2 nights later, without warning. Several small crafts detached from Alari's ships orbiting the spire. They jammed communications, cut the power to half the station, and released EMP pulses that stunned robotic guards. The spire shook. Lights flickered. Doors locked. People panicked. The Silent Order had arrived, but they didn't come with bombs. It came with a strange device machine designed to send out a wave that affected the mind, blocking all higher emotion. A weapon that made people cold. Blank. Empty. Varela knew it well. It was called the Silencer Core. Running into the storm, Elias grabbed his small defense kit. We need to get to the control room. If they activate that device, everyone on this station could lose the ability to feel. Rilla moved beside him. They'll be aiming for me too. He turned to her. You don't have to go into danger. She looked him straight in the eyes. But I do. I started this. I chose emotion. And now I'll fight to protect it. They ran through the half-dark halls. Emergency lights blinked. Distant sounds of footsteps echoed behind them. Other diplomats hid in locked rooms. Some tried to contact their planets. But communication was down. Only a few people were still moving free. Lilius, Varela, and a small group of allies, facing the Silent Order at the heart of the station. The Silent Order had placed their machine. It stood like a tall silver flower, unfolding sharp arms and glowing with a strange blue light. Around it stood 6 Alari in black robes. Their faces were calm, without emotion. They spoke in short codes, their hands moving to activate the wave emitter. Then, Varela stepped out from the shadows. Stop, she called. The robed figures turned. Varela of the Lost once said, You have fallen too far. There is no returning. I have not fallen, she replied. I have risen. I see clearly now. One of them raised a hand to activate the silencer. Elias raised his small blaster. Don't. But Varela stepped forward. You want to erase emotion? But look around you. This station is built on connection, peace, feeling. You fear change, but change is not destruction. It is growth. Emotion leads to war, one Alari said. No, Varela replied. Fear without understanding leads to war. Emotion leads to love, trust, courage. The machine began to hum. Varela looked at Elias. He nodded. Then, together. They ran, the heartbeats louder while Elias disabled the machine's control panel. Varela faced the leader of the Silent Order. He moved fast, his motions sharp like lightning. But she was quicker, not with violence but with words. You fear pain, she said. That is why you hide from emotion. But pain is part of healing. I am not your enemy. I am your mirror. The leader froze, and in that moment, Elias finished the shutdown. The silencer core dimmed. The light faded, and silence truly returned. But this time, it was peaceful. Not forced. Not empty. just still. After the storm, the attack was over, the Silent Order was arrested. Their plan stopped, and the spire stood tall once more. In the following days, security was increased. New laws were passed to protect the rights of emotional learning across species, and Varela, she became something new, not just a diplomat, but a symbol, a bridge between logic and feeling. A simple moment one evening. Elias and Varela sat on a bench under a fake tree in the station garden. He looked at her. He didn't have to speak. To them like that, you could have let them fall. She smiled softly. They were once like me, lost, afraid. Someone once spoke gently to me too. He reached for her hand. She didn't hesitate. Their fingers locked, and somewhere, between stars and silence, two hearts beat as one. The battle had ended. But the real journey was just beginning. Marathon Spire was no longer just a place of cold logic and distant diplomacy. It was a place where hearts could grow. Varela and Elias stood side by side on the upper deck, watching the stars twinkle far away, a new dawn news of the Silencer Core.
Act!
Attack spread across the galaxy. Many worlds sent messages of support. The Alari High Council, after much debate, agreed to reconsider their ancient laws. They created a new program, the Harmony Initiativa, a chance for all species to learn not only about each other's science and politics, but also their feelings. Varela was asked to lead the program. She accepted, but it wasn't just a duty. It was her dream. The change within the next weeks were full of hard work. Varela met with scientists, artists, and diplomats from dozens of planets. Together, they designed lessons about kindness, courage, and empathy. She taught them what she had learned from Elias and from herself. Sometimes, Elias would watch her speak and feel proud. The quiet Alari girl had become a voice for hope. A quiet moment one evening. After a long day, Elias found Varela sitting alone in the garden. The artificial moonlight bathed her face in silver. She looked peaceful, but tired. He sat beside her. "Do you regret your choice?" he asked softly. She smiled. "Never. It was scary at first. I feared losing my home, my family, my place. But I found something more. I found myself." Elias reached for her hand. "And me?" he asked. She looked into his eyes. "You gave me courage. You showed me that feelings can be our strength." A promise. They stood together at the edge of the observation deck. Below, the galaxy stretched endlessly bright stars, swirling nebulae, and distant planets. "I want to stay," Varela said. "Not just here, with you." Elias smiled. "I want that too." They embraced a quiet moment between two worlds. The future months passed. The Harmony Initiative grew stronger. Species that had never spoken before shared stories, songs, and laughter, even the silent. Order's followers began to listen. The galaxy felt different, more connected, more alive. The unthinkable question. Answered one day, while walking through the gardens, Varela stopped. She turned to Elias, cheeks warming. With a gentle blush, she hesitated. Then, with a soft voice, she asked the question that once felt unthinkable. "Elias, will you stay with me? Not just as a friend, but as something more?" Elias's eyes shone. He took her hands in his. "I have never wanted anything more, eh?" They smiled, knowing the path ahead might be uncertain. But together, they were ready. Hey. New chapter. The stars outside whispered stories of old, but for Varela and Elias. The brightest story was the one they were writing now, a story of courage, love, and the power of feeling. A story where an alien and a human dared to cross the boundaries of worlds and hearts. A story that would inspire generations to come. The end.